The fundamental game of the secret team, they have this power because they control secrecy and secret intelligence, and because they have the ability to take advantage of most modern communication systems in the world, of global transportation systems, of quantities of weapons of all kinds, and when needed, the full support of a worldwide U.S. military supporting base structure. They can use the finest intelligence systems in the world, and most importantly, they have been able to operate under the canopy of an assumed ever-present enemy called communism. It will be interesting to see what enemy develops in the years ahead. It appears that UFOs and aliens are being primed to fulfill that role for the future. To top all this off, there is the fact that the CIA itself has assumed the right to generate and direct secret operations. Greetings. Let's see here. All right. Excuse me, I'm sorry. Gotta get this synced up right. There we go, that's good. My name is Ryan Perella, and actually, shit, I forgot the best part. Well...
Cream snap it to read it later. Ryan Perella. Let's see if they're... Roger.
Okay, so I don't send super chats. I don't have the means to do that. That's not how I communicate. So I imagine if you did a shout out like that, I probably said something that's of interest to you. And my friend, I'm here to give you the best thing I've ever experienced in my life. The testimony of when I saw craft appear before me, and that was 4 years ago on Christmas Eve at 4:20 in the morning at a place that I left. Can we see that? Shit. A marker for. That dodecahedron. This with 2 lit God Morgan IKEA C2032 battery powered candles. They go on for 6 hours at a time, and then they turn off for 18 hours. Then they turn back on at 6 hours. So let's go back here. Yes. Okay, so I apologize for all this silliness, this wackiness, these remote control camera devices. Eventually I'll get this thing and work perfectly, but you know, fuck, I'm talking to a guy who's got a camera in his background, so you might understand the kind of weirdness that comes along with being a photographer. Actually, the things you discover through the lens, through optics. We're learning about directed energy weapons, lasers and such, and shit, let me make sure my audio's doing something. How's my audio? Audio looks good. All right, eventually I can monitor all that shit, but anyway. I'm going to tell you about the best thing that ever happened to me, and I've tried to reach the owner of the property to which this event happened, but they're totally unresponsive, and in fact, I've learned a lot about that person and their affiliations and associations and the specter that they are under. Anyway, to give you an idea of who I am, where I came from, I wanted to tell you about, well, first off, this craft that I saw. I'll just cut to the chase real quick. Let's cut to the chase. Where's that damn photo? Oh, brother. There we go. This thing here. This appears in a 2020, this is a still image from 2020, Raised by Wolves. This was an HBO Max television show. It's since been memory hold. Okay, so this thing hides a real ship. Okay, the ship that I saw has the exact same features of these There's hemispheres here. That's a hemisphere, and on the other side is a hemisphere. So the ship I saw had twin hemispheres, which... The reason I had to tell you this story in this room is because I have things in this room that I need to share with you, because they're artifacts. So this is a lamp. This is a inexpensive lamp. I bought this in September 2020 on Amazon. I bought 2 of these for the room that we're in right now. They're going to drop like 4 feet. There's like a 4-foot extension, and they were going to be visible from the street. So I thought, I want something nice and whatever. So anyway, this is the unassembled lamp. It's a frosted white glass with a what looks like, well, this is, I guess this is aluminum. I don't know, this is stainless steel. Anyway, whatever it is, it's got a metallic silver finish, and it's domed. It's This is not a hemisphere. This is not a hemisphere. A hemisphere is a perfect half a sphere. The craft that I saw, which is portrayed here, and shows kind of these details. They always kind of look like nipples. The ship that I saw had hemispheres in exactly where those positions are. But they were white frosted glass, and there was light emanating from them. Now, one of the curious things I thought about was if the lights were turned on bright, you wouldn't be able to see the details of the craft. Now, the lights were dim enough that it kind of illuminated the general area that I was at. It was a driveway. I was being escorted off the property by LA County Sheriff's deputies from Lost Hills Sheriff Station, who then took me into a jail cell. And when I asked, and I got a meal there, and it was atrocious. It was like I don't even want to describe it. And then I sat, and I was sitting there, and I was crying. And I thought, how the fuck did I get here? I had trespassed on private property, and gave myself up to who I thought I was summoned there. So let me tell you this. So I got to talk to the camera. This is a ship, right? It's just a fucking photo. But anyway, the critical thing about this, I got to tell this because I'm going to forget. This ship is so exact, except this ship, and you'll see photos of this in detail better, but let me explain it to you now, and I can point to it for reference. So I can see it, so I can do it instead of doing what I was doing, which was dumb. These lines here, there are 2 indentations, these main lines here. Now, what the ship I saw looked like the ship from 1986, the Flight of the Navigator. It looked like it came out of the same factory or whatever that produced that ship, except it's a different model, right? So the Flight of the Navigator ship, maybe that's a 1-person whatever. That was a trans-temporal craft. That was a craft that could transcend time and space, go into other dimensions, and it communicated telepathically. I would cut to a shot of the Flight of the Navigator. Maybe we'll watch some of that in a little bit. We'll see how we're doing here. I'm trying to get through this. I need to tell you these incredible things, and this is imperfect, but you are the man, my buddy DJ. This is for DJ. It's for the dark journalist, man. That's my plate. I think this is my Spider. I had a Porsche Spider, and it was fucking stolen by Porsche Financial. I sent them a payment, and before the payment was arrived on the Friday that was the agreed upon date, on Thursday they impounded the car. When I called them on Friday, they said they wanted another $3,000 to pay for the impound fees and the shit. And I lost the car. I had like $10,000 equity in the car. It led to a collapse, right? It was a horrible thing, and I would really be fucking pissed off about it, except I would never have gotten to where I am now today if that hadn't happened. So, with all the things that happen in our lives, I'm incredibly grateful to be where I am, because for every seemingly curse, you find a blessing. At least I have. And, the way I got to the place that I was at where I saw this ship, I was following ideas in my mind. And the way I got them was I realized I had this theory. I'm going to put this away because I think I've expressed the reality of this thing. So the further point I wanted to make about this, what's really interesting is that I had two of these. The ship that I saw had two hemispheres. The other one is... Shit, do I need to do this? I'll just do this since it's here. See that other one right there? Okay. Great. So, two hemispheres. Like bada bing, bada boom. Right? This is another story. This emblem, this will be familiar to anybody that knows anything about my website. What does that mean? I don't know what that means yet. I think it's a kind of diagram, a kind of plan. Like a... excuse me. Here's books. I gotta get through all these books and tell you shit about all these books. Okay, I'm sorry. I apologize. I'm trying to get through this. I have all these artifacts here so I can help direct my train of thought. As you do. Fuck, what a disaster. Gosh, I hope you watch this. Okay, you have to watch this because there's stuff going on in the world and we're all hip to it. We all know, you and I, we know what's going on here. And actually what I wanted to do is I wanted to tell you where I came from. So what's in here is the second term paper of 1997 when I had an English class and my muse was in this class. The only girl I ever cared about in high school was in this class, and I knew we had these two term projects and we were going to present them to the class, right? So this was the second one. This was about the assassination of JFK. And I haven't read this in a long time, but today I'm going to read it because I want you to know where I came from. And I'm sorry, I'm just trying to get the right draft. One of these is a final draft, and one of them is a... Fuck. I've been trying to get this message out for a really long time. Okay, I'm going to go to this last one. I found this. Okay. I've been trying to get this out for a really long time, and we're trying to tell something so odd is so mind-bending, and here's an additional audio recording for what it's worth. Okay. Who's going to believe this stuff? So you got to try to find the right person that's going to believe this. And again, I apologize. This is just off the cuff. This is the way I work. I don't like editing. I don't like doing any of that stuff. I'm kind of the... put it in the camera. Anyway, this is the JFK assassination from 1997. I was inspired by this movie, this film, JFK, by Oliver Stone. This incredible film changed my world. And the reason I have these things here, and the stories I'm going to tell you are going to be based on a kind of revelation of the method, a whispering through the art. And the medium which I speak of most is cinema, is American cinema, from the best directors. Not just, as a whole, cinema is garbage. It's an entertainment medium. But the best filmmakers that ever were, the best artists that are right now are filmmakers. That's the medium. You can change the mind. You can change the perception of a human being. You can give them ideas that change the whole world with a camera. That was that little bit I was trying to tell you about cameras and that kind of stuff, There's something amazing about cameras. Christopher Nolan said in a book that I read, he has these great books on the behind the scenes of his films, and he speaks of the power of the camera that never before could you record something and play it backwards and see the details that happen in fractions of a second. You can do that with a camera. It's an incredible tool. And what's it used to do? It's used for booty shaking and I mean that all kinds of things. It's used to. I fell in love with cameras because I had access to Porsche 911s, and I recorded those, and I could sell those on YouTube if I just recorded them. And I just off the cuff, I knew so much about the cars, and I could just tell you everything you needed in 3 minutes and show it to you, which was even better. The power of the camera was so amazing because my words were really unnecessary. The images spoke. 1,000 words per frame, 24 frames per second. That's an incredible medium, and it's used for the most ridiculous things. It's used to sell garbage and put murder ideas in our head with all the movies and films that are about just these incredibly degenerative things. And this film specifically opened my mind. This is the report. On November 22nd, it's about 8 pages. On November 22nd, 1963, one of the most horrifying things our nation ever witnessed occurred. Our president, John Fitzgerald Kennedy, was removed from office by assassination. Quickly, our government created the Warren Commission, a group of 7 men with the task of finding out who was responsible for the president's death. They had concluded that a crazed young man, Lee Harvey Oswald, was the lone assassin. I will show the evidence of the case and piece it together to show that there was a conspiracy in the killing of President Kennedy. The American public was told that a 25-year-old man, Lee Harvey Oswald, had killed the president on November 22nd, 1963. At approximately 12:30, the president was shot in the head while riding in a parade in his presidential motorcade. The early reports said that the shots came from the 6th floor of the Texas School Book Depository. Police told us that Oswald was the lone assassin. The Warren Commission was inaugurated on November 29th, 1963. Charles Goodell of New York had proposed that a joint congressional committee conduct the investigation on the death of President John F. Kennedy. This group of men was called the Warren Commission. The commission consisted of this: Earl Warren, Chief Justice of the United States Supreme Court since 1953. Allen Dulles, former director of the CIA before being fired by President Kennedy. Gerald Ford, said to have been the CIA's best friend in Congress. Richard Russell, chairman of the Senate Armed Forces Committee. John McCloy, assistant secretary of war, and former Kennedy advisor Hale Boggs, U.S. representative of Louisiana. Excuse me for the zipper. U.S. Representative of Louisiana, and Senator John Sherman Cooper of Kentucky. This group was heavily weighed with men whose backgrounds were pro-intelligence or pro-military. This thing just split, so. Excuse me. This story of the Warren Report, Lee Harvey Oswald, an employee at the Texas School Book Depository, had killed the president at 12:30 in the afternoon. Oswald was on the 6th floor of the book depository. As the president's motorcade proceeded down Elm Street, Oswald fired 3 shots at the president. The first shot was said to have missed completely and hit James Tague, who was standing under the triple overpass, in the face with a bullet fragment. The second shot hit Kennedy in the neck and was said to have made a total of 7 wounds in both Kennedy and Texas Governor John Connally. They called this the magic bullet. The third was a shot that went through Kennedy's head. Oswald then escaped from the book depository and headed home. He was home only a short time. He then picked up his revolver and left. He was then said to have shot and killed Dallas police officer J.D. Tippit while resisting arrest. Oswald was later arrested in a movie theater and charged with killing J.D. Tippit. 2 days later, while they were transferring Oswald from the city jail to the county jail, he was shot by nightclub owner Jack Ruby. Oswald was now known as the murderer of both President Kennedy and J.D. Tippit without ever receiving a trial. Okay, I've just realized I've been on this thing for 18 minutes, and I'm on page 2 of what I really wanted to start with. So I've been rushing this. So I'm going to just kind of chill out a little bit, take this pace a little bit slower, and try and do this a little bit better, because it's not going to be so quick. It looks a little dark, but whatever. It took the Warren Commission 9 months to come up with the story of the lone assassin. However, there are many things wrong with their report. Jim Garrison, district attorney of New Orleans at the time, had decided to get right on the case because of its ties to Lee Harvey Oswald and the city of New Orleans. After Garrison had read the entire report on the president's death, he was very curious about the many strong leads that had not been investigated. Incredible thing, you mentioned this also, DJ, the, ask the question. You can cover up any crime if you own the prosecution. The prosecution doesn't ask a critical question that identifies whoever or reveals something that's pertinent. If you have the person that's reliant on asking the questions and they're not asking those questions, the whole world loses. So to your point, you speak of this. Excellent. Considering the lofty credentials of the commission members and the quality and size of the staff available to them, I had expected to find a thorough and professional investigation. I found nothing of the sort. This was from Jim Garrison on page 15 of On the Trail of the Assassins. Many witnesses there claimed they had heard shots from the grassy knoll in front of the president and not the book depository behind him. Witnesses such as S.M. Holland, who was on the top of the triple overpass, said that when the shooting had occurred, he looked over toward the grassy knoll where he thought the shots had come from and saw a puff of smoke coming from above the picket fence. He also recalls 2 police officers from motorcade running up the grassy knoll where he saw smoke. A police officer threw his motorcycle down in the middle of the street and ran up the embankment with his pistol drawn. These policemen, Joe Marshall and Sheriff Seymour Weitzman, headed up the grassy knoll. When they were searched the area, they came across a still unidentified man. They had drawn pistols, but put them down as the man produced credentials from the Secret Service, something that eventually ties back to the Technical Services Division at CIA, which was in charge of handling all credentials for all of Secret Service starting in 1963 or 2 or something. Many other witnesses encountered, and I may be wrong on some of those details, but that's generally what's correct. CIA controls security at Secret Service. They can produce the badge. It's too many things to count. Many other witnesses encountered the same thing. This would not be odd, except that all Secret Service men had been accounted for. Jean Hill, who was on the curb, said that she heard 4 to 6 shots, and she said, "I frankly thought they were coming from the knoll." She saw a man running away from the knoll parking lot after the shooting. She was then intercepted by a man claiming to be a Secret Service agent. Tom Tilson, an off-duty officer, saw a man sliding down the back side of the grassy knoll to his car, which is at the back side of the book depository. Sliding down the back side of the grassy knoll to the back side of the depository. He followed this man in the car. Also, Tilson got close enough. He wrote down the license number and make of the car. He reported it to Dallas Homicide Squad, but never heard a word after that. Julia Ann Mercer was in her car near the grassy knoll an hour before the shooting. There was a green pickup stopped next to her. She recalls that a man in the back of the truck was unloading a rifle. She looked over at the driver and later identified the man as Jack Ruby. She had also noticed the police officers above the triple overpass made no attempt to interfere with them. When shown her statement in the Warren Commission exhibit, she replied, "These have all been altered. They have me saying just the opposite of what I really told them." Mercer is only one of many witnesses who were harassed by the FBI concerning things that they saw. You know, one of these cameras used to only record for 30 minutes. I was talking once into this whole fucking long thing, and it didn't even record half of it. This camera, speaking of cameras, this camera can actually live stream without a computer, which is pretty amazing, but I don't know how to fucking I know how to get it working. It's not working right now. I gotta fool with it. But again, that's why this is recorded and uploaded and not, Can you read this? It's not close enough to read anyway. There were a few people who were looking toward the book depository just before the shooting. 16-year-old Amos Ewens glanced toward the book depository where he saw a man on the 6th floor with what appeared to be a pipe. Later he identified it as a rifle. He said that the man in the window had a bald spot on his head and that the man appeared to be black. Arnold Rowland, who was standing on Houston Street, across Dealey Plaza 15 minutes before the assassination said he glanced up at the window on the 6th floor of the book depository and saw a dark-skinned man who he described as elderly Negro. John Powell, who was on the 6th floor of the county jail on Houston Street across from the book depository, clearly saw two men, one with a rifle. One of the two men had a dark complexion. With all these witnesses describing the same man who was dark in complexion and possibly Negro, you would have to believe that these people in fact saw a black man in the window of the book depository at the time of the shooting and not a young white, non-balding Lee Harvey Oswald. So this is curious. I wasn't familiar with all that detail. It's been a long time since I wrote this. Again, the reason I was sharing this for now is to go through this, kind of see if there's anything that's revelatory after the fact. There are many problems with the Warren Commission idea that Lee Harvey Oswald had done the shooting with the inaccurate Mannlicher Carcano rifle. The most important piece of evidence is that on the day of the shooting, November 22nd, Oswald was given a nitrate test to determine whether or not he had fired the rifle that day. The test was determined to be negative, and they had not fired any rifle on November 22nd. Second, the gun was first found in the assassin's lair, was described by Seymour Weitzman as being a .765 Mauser, a highly accurate German-made rifle, which I later come to find out, Joseph Farrell, talking to dark journalists, goes into further detail that these guns were made for President Perón and his Argentinian Nazi services. So they got Mauser to make these specific weapons, tying them to the Third Reich. I'm pretty sure you told me that. That's amazing. I didn't know that in 1997, but I was kind of there. Didn't know the details of where the Mausers came from. How about that? But I knew the Mauser was different. And Deputy Sheriff Eugene Boone signed a sworn affidavit saying that the gun was a Mauser. Also, the three Mannlicher Carcano shells were found nearly parallel to each other, as if they were placed. That's not what it says here. Although this made them easy to find, it should say identified what an experienced user of rifles knows, that when a rifle is fired, the cartridge is flung violently away. A neat pattern like the one found in the 6th floor of the depository is virtually impossible. There was also no clip ever found which would be needed to fire the Mannlicher Carcano. Instead, without a clip, the bullets would have to be loaded by hand, making the shooting in just 5.6 seconds, the time established by the Zapruder film, totally impossible. So the Mannlicher Carcano must have been found without a magazine. The clip that held the 3 shots. If there's no clip, how did those 3 shots get there? Wow, that's interesting too. I don't think I've ever heard anyone say that. Instead, without a clip, the bullets would have to be loaded by hand, making the shooting in just 5.6 seconds, the time established by the Zapruder film, totally impossible. It was also said that the sight on the gun was badly out of line with the barrel, and that the sight would have to have been realigned before every shot. The FBI had 3 sharpshooters try this, and none of them came close to accomplishing this, nor could the best marksmen duplicate the shooting feat by Oswald. It is now known that Oswald was a poor shot in the Marine Corps. Sergeant Nelson Delgado, who served with Oswald in the Marines, recalled Oswald as a poor shot. The day of the assassination, the FBI looked for fingerprints on the gun, but found not a single print. It was then returned to Dallas officials, where the next day they announced that they had found Oswald's palm print on the gun. It seems obvious to me that not only had Oswald not used the Mannlicher Carcano rifle as stated, but it was not even the murder weapon. I believe that the .765 Mauser rifle, which was identified by 3 different individuals, was the gun that was fired from the 6th floor of the book depository. As soon as the shooting stopped, witnesses saw Oswald leave the book depository in a light-colored Nash Rambler, which was driven by a black man. Witnesses remember seeing the car parked on the wrong side of Houston Street minutes before the shooting. After the shooting, 3 men left out of the back of the book depository and raced out of the car and sped off. Roger Craig noticed that the door of the car was still open as they left the depository. This was most likely the same car that Tom Tilson followed after the shooting. Source materials on these... Jim Garrison, can't read it, I'm sorry. James DiEugenio, Destiny Betrayed, and Mark Lane, Rush to Judgment video. The Zapruder film was one of the things that the Warren Commission had not expected. The 8mm home movie camera, hey, the camera, the captures. The 8mm home movie camera that Abraham Zapruder was recording the parade on was the piece of evidence that proved there was more than one shooter. Frame by frame, the Zapruder film shows that the time from the first shot to the last shot was only 5.6 seconds. The two most important frames of the film have been doctored. Frame 314 and frame 315 had been reversed, creating the image that Kennedy was hit in the rear of the head and that he was pushed forward. Oh, so they put frame 315 in frame 314's place and vice versa. So it was only captured in 2 frames. Only 2 frames capture the movement. The president's head moved back and then the left, indicating that the bullet had come from right in front of him and to his right, the grassy knoll. The Zapruder film also shows that the second and third shot came one after the other, only 1.8 seconds apart. It is impossible to reload the Mannlicher Carcano rifle in that time. The second shot, the magic bullet, had made a total of 7 wounds in both Kennedy and Connally. It is said that the bullet entered the back of the president's neck, then exited the front of his neck. It then went toward Connally and entered the rear of his right armpit. The bullet moved through Connally's body, shattering his 5th rib and leaving from the right side of his chest. It then entered Connally's right wrist, shattering the radius bone. After coming out the other side of the wrist, it entered his left thigh. And I notate the 7 entry exit points, from which it later fell out. According to the Warren report, the bullet was then found in almost perfect condition in a corridor in Parkland Hospital, apparently having fallen from a cot. It is said that Jack Ruby was seen in the halls of Parkland Hospital shortly before the magic bullet was found. So the teacher wrote this note here, I don't know what that says. Need tration? I don't know. We know from witness testimony that Dallas police officer J.D. Tippit was killed somewhere between 1:06 and 1:10 p.m. When Oswald got home, he quickly entered and left. But on his way out, he picked up his revolver. Oswald's housekeeper saw him outside the house standing by a bus bench at 1:04. The spot where J.D. Tippit was killed is about 1 mile. Wow. From Oswald's home. Oswald would have had to have gone 1 mile in 2 to 6 minutes to kill Tippit, but the Warren Commission, who knew this, simply ignored the time anomaly. There you go, another thing. You ignore, again, this is metadata. Well, I haven't said this before, but metadata is the thing that photographers know that captures time. If you have GPS coordinates, place, captures the lens, captures the aperture, captures shutter speed, captures all these different things. This is called metadata. But everything in the world, every event creates metadata. People are in places, they are there in location and proximity to things. That's metadata. Millions of things, any event, any person that's at that event, tells you all kinds of information. It's all there. And I learned this from being a photographer and learning about metadata, seeing this thing that was on every digital image, metadata, something that didn't also exist when you had film. So that's an interesting thing. Metadata is how you put all these people in these places at the same time together. I came back to Jim Garrison after watching Adam Curtis's film Can't Get You Out of My Head from 2021. And in it he presents Garrison's case, and he says, basically says that, Garrison was wrong. But, he's not convincing at all in that argument. It's just like, okay, we got to say this, but he presents this incredible bit of information where he talks about propinquity. And he says you can't try to determine all these actions on their own. You have to look at time and propinquity. And what that means is you have to look at the time and the proximity where all these people are all together. And when you start looking at crimes in that regard, and you start utilizing metadata to create, use metadata to create relational databases, propinquity also helps you determine that as well. So if you're hunting a specter force that has all kinds of different agents, all wearing different masks, all pretending to be somebody that they're not, you know, you have to look at their actions. Actions are fundamentally what matter. And anyway, let me continue. I apologize for the... But the Warren Commission knew this and simply ignored the time anomaly. When the Dallas officials arrived, Officer J.M. Poe had marked his initials on the 4 shells found at the spot of Tippett's murder. We know that Oswald was carrying a revolver because it had been confiscated from him after his arrest, but the 4 shots found by Poe had markings on them from an automatic weapon. After the autopsy of Tippett, the 4... Okay, that's interesting. When the Dallas officials arrived, marked his initials on the 4 shells found at the spot of Tippett's murder. Automatic weapon means it's not a revolver. Oswald only had a revolver. Okay, that's interesting. I'm sorry you don't get this as a full... That's what it looks like at the top there. Good autofocus. Oh, it's good autofocus. A little slow, but it's okay. All right. After the autopsy of Tippett, the 4 bullets were sent to the FBI. They had concluded that 3 of the bullets were copper-coated Westerns and that the other was a lead Remington. However, 2 of the shells that the FBI had received from the Dallas Police Department were manufactured by Western and the other 2 by Remington. These differences in bullets just didn't add up. It seems to me that the Dallas Homicide Division had fabricated evidence and replaced the 4 shells from the automatic with those fired from the revolver. Shells, yeah, there should be 3 and 1. Instead, they got 2 and 2. Metadata don't line up, man. It seems to me the Dallas homicide had fabricated evidence and replaced the 4 shells from the automatic with those fired from a revolver. Here's another case where you realize that if you have one person within that division and they are assigned to that case, now if you're a detective, you can be the best fucking detective, but you don't get assigned to the case, you're not going to figure out that case. All right, so I realize with media, newspapers, motion pictures, stuff that gets produced, you know, a lot of these people, these gatekeepers, are in this cult. They're in a fucking cult. That's what I realized eventually. This person who I thought was this incredible person who was trying to help the world is in fact part of a cult that may in fact be vampiric. Vampiric, like blood drinking. Yeah. And they hide, they wear a mask of something else. And they have a foundation that seeks out to encourage children. Who is this person really? Who are these people really? Shit, I gotta tell you about David Jacobs. Let me tell you this real quick as a side note. So when David Jacobs wrote 3 books. The Threat was the first one I read, and then I read Secret Life, and then Walking Among Us, and I think it's The Threat. So I first got onto the trail of the Brotherhood of the Snake from William Bramley and this incredible book, Gods of Eden. Oh, focus. It just won't fucking focus. What the fuck? Whatever. The Threat, page 121. Here we go, right here. I bookmarked it. It's at the bottom here. And there are many other informal estimates. For example, the evidence strongly suggests that the majority, if not all, of close encounter UFO sightings are the beginnings or endings of abduction events. Even high-level sightings may be indicative of abductions. Statistics from Gallup polls on UFO sightings, that's not important. This was the line that made me look at this whole situation differently. Now, people generally are trying to... So immediately before I saw this craft, I had driven across the country from Missouri to Malibu to Zuma Beach on PCH, and the way on this trip, somebody through Instagram claiming to be the person I eventually, whose property I trespassed onto, contacted me on Instagram saying that they were this person. They were using an alternate thing. I could show you the stuff. I don't know where my phone is right now. Let me just focus on, I want to focus on the story of JFK. I want to focus on the UFO I saw, and I'm trying to figure out what it was that I saw. That's why I'm reaching you, actually. I'm trying to figure out what I saw. And I've written David Jacobs. I wrote him an email. There's a university email address. Boy, there's like hardly any light in here. There's a university email address. There's only an F4, but I can zoom with this though, so that's pretty cool. Digression. Okay, so I'm just going to just point this up for the camera. This is even better. Check this out. And there are many other informal estimates. For example, the evidence strongly suggests that the majority, if not all, of close encounter UFO sightings are the beginnings or endings of abduction events. Cool. So David Jacobs, I tried to reach him, I got no response. Courtney Brown, like 2 weeks ago, said that David Jacobs only investigates the negative ETs, okay? So, again, who did I see? What did I see? Now, fuck. How many more pages of this? I'm a little bored with my own writing, so I'm going to just tell you about something else. So when I got to Zuma Beach, and I'm in contact with this person who I think is probably an NSA agent, because I was contacted over the course of 2 years with like 8 different numbers, and probably half of them were from Virginia. And the person I was speaking to has no connection to Virginia that is publicly known and I'm aware of. Anyway, so somebody was impersonating this person. So somebody knew I was maybe going there, and then but I think those are two separate things. I think the craft I saw is monitoring me. It thinks it's monitoring thoughts, right? Telepathy is a thing, right? I was following leads based on something that nobody taught me. It was just something I discovered. It was through the Breathe app on the iPhone, on the Apple Watch. There's this breathing application, and when I got my Apple Watch Series 2 in 2017, when I moved to New York for a little while, I started this thing called breathing. I had heard about this thing that Jerry Seinfeld did called transcendental meditation, and I was going to learn it. I eventually did learn it. I don't practice transcendental meditation. They practice a mantra of a chant, and it's calling something, and I don't know who it's calling. So when I realized that, I also realized that every time, as I was doing this, I was never learning anything new about the investigations into Spectre ops and whatnot. I was just kind of being presented all these things and, following them. It's like, prompts, and it's not really where I want to go to. So actually that gets back to the breathing app, which is important because my thing I just figured out is it breathes, and so this watch will vibrate with haptics, and it gets you to inhale and exhale. And what I believe is happening is our minds work through a chemical process of oxygen burning. So if we are inhaling oxygen, and maybe it's best if it goes through the nose because it touches the pineal maybe, or what? I'm thinking about a runner's high. Runners, you're taught to breathe in through the nose and exhale through the mouth. And, if you run for a long time, you get this runner's high at the end of it. Be nice to be able to have that high without having to run. And anyway, meditation, I believe, is the kind of way that this happens. Now, this is how I discovered many things. I started Well, the thing that's really most telling about it is what are the things that it's telling you to do? What are you being made aware of in your meditations, in your breathing exercises? Okay, how's that? And so I would do these exercises. It goes 5 minutes at a time. I do 4 breaths per minute, and so it's just a slow intake. And what I find is that it clears your mind. But if you're a kind of busy mindset, you're probably going to be reminded of things that you have to do. And so inevitably, I'm reminded of things that I need to do, and I kind of calm the mind. And I try and calm the mind, and in the stillness that comes, ideas come to me, and you do this for a while, and your brain waves change. And so you do this in 5-minute sessions, and I would do 20 minutes at a time, and I try to get through that. And I try to do that twice a day because I heard that was the protocols for transcendental meditation. But again, I was never learning anything doing that. So there was a point where I really told you a wild story. I need to connect it all. I'm about ready to abandon this, and I can't do that yet. So let me go back to this JFK thing. Let me go back to this, because this tells you about who I am when I was 17. That's kind of important, because actually, to get back to the point of meditation, I think we are, as human beings, our experiences, those are the data points in our biological computer from which we interpret the world, how it really works. And there's a whole bunch of people who just only rely on books, and they don't have the real lived experience. They never went out and explored. They never did anything that really risked themselves. And another reason, actually, I need to reach you in particular is the Arthurian angle. Gosh, there's so much I got to talk to you about. There's so many things I got to tell you about. Now, again, I'm just trying to express these things that are most critical to me, that are curious, that you've made me aware of. You told me about Excalibur from 1981. And, the way you put it was so simple. It says, it's all there. It's like everything is there. And you kept repeating the charm of making, which... I just heard that, and I thought, what is this movie? And so, I'm a guy who watched movies. I love movies, but I'd never seen Excalibur. And I was familiar with the Arthurian myth from the movie First Night, and that's kind of a corny movie. And but Excalibur's really got everything in there. And the event in hindsight, having seen Excalibur and learning about my own personal history, I feel more like I feel like I'm on a Grail quest. I'm Parsifal, and this craft that I witnessed, kind of in a way, this is a Lego model of it. I made this little Lego model. This was out of a 1999 Lego Y-wing model. But I took off the front of it, and and this basically was like, hey, this makes a good kind of model of that ship you saw. So actually, let me show you that ship in action, because it's really cool the way it appears. And again, it's this show you can't even watch anymore, and I just showed you something stupid. So check this out. Shit. So in this show, dude, this show is amazing. The show Dune, Okay, so this is how the thing appears in the show. And this ship appears only in this one scene. All right? And in the second season, they do not show this ship ever again. It only appears in this one scene right here. And from that exact fucking angle, with trees below it obscuring the underbelly of the ship further back, I could not see the back of the ship. I can only see the face of it. So when looking at the face of this ship, a couple things are important. One is the bilateral symmetry. It is symmetrical from left to right. It has two sides. It has a face, right? It is not a saucer. It is not rotating. The saucer rotation, I believe, to be indicative, telltale of, a certain kind of technology. Telltale, right? So if you believe in remote viewing, I mentioned Courtney Brown. Courtney Brown remote views Michael Herrera walking upon a rotating thing that has a pyramid at the top. So I'm trying to figure out who made this ship. And it seems that, design characteristics tell you a lot, of who made it. If it's got, devil's horns on it, maybe it's not the ship you want to see if you're not into that kind of stuff. I'm not into that kind of stuff. I'm into fixing the fucking world, all right? I'm into fixing the world because, the simplest way this was put to me was by Buckminster Fuller, and he said, we have the ability to raise the standard of living for 100% of the people on the whole planet. And if we did that, we would change the entire world. Go from a society of want and lack to a society of abundance. We could do so much with so little that we could raise the entire standard of living for 100% of the population of the earth. And he actually made structures, and I'm going to have to develop this because nobody else is developing this. I'm going to try and take this to somebody who can help me do something with this. Hey, DJ, my friend DJ. For DJ, I'm telling you something. I know a guy, but I haven't talked to him in 12 years, and he's pretty powerful. He makes films, like really important films that actually disclose things that you need to know about, like the idea of an omega point controlling a hive-minded invader species. And if you kill the one, kind of like in Game of Thrones, when you kill the White Walkers, it destroys every single one that was possessed by the White Walkers, right? I think that vampirism kind of goes by the same thing. Whoever made the vampire, if you kill that vampire, it kills all the things because they're somehow attached somehow. It's interesting. I haven't actually made that point before, that connection before. So why does this craft come to me? I think, when I saw this thing, I was just amazed. I was just staring up, looking at it. I had my hands handcuffed behind my back. In front of me was the hood, the roof of sheriff's deputy's Ford Explorer-sized SUV. But before I got in the back of it, I was standing in front of it, and they just let me stare at it. And I was just looking at it, and it was right there. And I was facing north. And it was there, and I said to the deputy, I said out loud, I said, that's not supposed to be there. And one of the deputies said, don't worry about that. And so I thought that was important because one of those deputies also, when I was then, so I looked at this thing, it was like for 5, maybe 10, I think it was 10 minutes, maybe 8 minutes. And so I'm staring at this thing, and it's obscured. I can't see the total underside of it because it's being obscured by a tree that's only about 15 or maybe 20 feet tall. It's not a big tree. It's like a kind of a large citrus tree, maybe is what it was, like an orange tree kind of thing. It's not an orange tree. It's not what it was, but trying to picture height-wise. And again, this ship, the belly of it is just right there. It's just right above the tree. I can't see the back of the craft. I can't see above it. I can only see the face and the underside, the belly of it. Now, this is very different from lights in the sky, thing out in the wherever. You can't make it out because the lights are so bright that you can't make out any distinct structural shape. The light overpowers the silhouette of the craft. And so I was realizing this too, is that the lights that were on, they could have very easily turned the lights on super bright, maybe. I'm imagining you have the control to turn the lights up or right. You can control the intensity. So this thing wanted to be seen, and I had to go to a weird place to see it. And, how I got to that place is also weird. How I got to that girl is weird. The person whose property I trespassed onto, if I show you the ticket, you'll be able to search who lives at that place, and you'll be able to find that, and that's cool. And this person is really like, I think this is the whore of Babylon, is who that person really is. And, probably come riding a beast with, crowns, however many, or 7 crowns and 10 horns or something. They follow Sumerian stuff and Babylonian, I don't know what. I don't even know about that stuff. I got books on it, but I don't know what all that entails. But I'll tell you this, is that the people controlling the world believe in a totally different paradigm than the one you and I are living in, and we need to change that. And let me tell you this, it's been 54 minutes, and I've told you a lot, and I don't think I've told you everything I really want to. let me tell you, there's a great thing I learned. There's a Macintosh that's in your chat, and Macintosh told me this incredible thing about this line that I come from, because my mother's mother, who my middle name is Cersei, and I'm named after my mother's grandfather, but that was my mother's adopted father, and she wasn't born the name that I always knew her as. She had a different name, and her name was Ogilvy. And one time, when I was probably about 30 years old, she was living in Parthenia, and she told me, she said, "You're a baron." She said, "You have people. You have lands." I think she even said, "You have a castle." She told me this only one time. Now, I was probably listening to sports talk radio during the day, running errands, doing monkey work or something, I don't know what I was doing when I was at that point. But she told me that one time, and I hadn't remembered that until about 9 months ago. It was actually March 23rd when I was sending this person whose property I trespassed books. I sent her books and a data key. And it was in the course of assembling all that stuff that I had this memory, this realization that thing that my grandmother told me one time. It's just me and her. I was helping her doing something. So, usually it's not a family function where everybody's around. That's when you see grandma. It was some other thing. I was helping her with her car or picking up groceries or something like that. And at that point, she stopped me before I left, and she told me this. And I want to find out how I check that out. I've checked the name Ogilvy, and online it says there were 3 claims to the barony of Ogilvy, and one of them is extant, and one of them is dormant, is what I saw online, and that's all I've really checked. Her mother was Ella Ogilvy, and my grandmother's name was Olga Ogilvy, and when she was less than a year old, a couple months, her name was changed, and her adoptive father was Cersei Henson, and I bear the middle name Cersei for that person. And so that middle name is actually not even my blood relation. And so that's kind of interesting. And I've done some checking into who Ella might have been and who she was married to, and there's shit, I haven't even told you the most interesting thing. The most interesting thing is that where I'm talking to you now, this is the studio space, and right behind me is an Oddfellows Lodge. An Oddfellows Lodge. You're not going to believe me unless I show you this, so let me just show you this. I need to show you my mess, so bear with me. I'm moving the camera. You got to see this. In fact, I'm going to need a flashlight. Bear with me, bear with me.